So let's have a deeper look at primary active transport, and we are going to break down and give some relevant examples under primary active transport. And under this, we are going to start with the sodium potassium pumps, or sodium potassium ATPase pumps. So this one relies on the concept of primary active transport. And how is primary active transport different from secondary? We need to know that primary active transport is where we use ATP directly, where ATP is used directly. So there is direct consumption or use of energy in form of ATP, as opposed to secondary active transport. So the sodium potassium pump is the one we are going to start with, and it is always in cells operating, providing homeostasis to different cells, maintaining cells being stable. So how does this pump work? The pump makes sure that there is pumping out of 3 sodium ions out for every 2 potassium ions, taken into the body, taken into the cell. So that is how the pump works. And in other words, if this is the cell, this pump will make sure that 3 sodium ions outside the cell for every 2 potassium ions taken up into the cell. So what does this imply? That means that if we have 30 sodium ions out, we'll have 20 potassium ions into the cell. So this has to be maintained at a balance to keep the cells in homeostasis. So if we have this pump, if the pump fails, you just imagine the pump has failed, we'll have an influx of sodium ions uncontrolled. So we'll have the cell having excess of sodium ions. We have a terrible influx of the sodium ions. So the cell will become totally occupied with excess of sodium ions. These sodium ions will raise what we call the osmotic pressure, the osmotic potential. We raise the osmotic potential of the cell, and this cell will take up water by osmosis. When it takes up water by osmosis, due to the fact that it has a cell membrane, so we have a cell membrane that is resistant to the turgor pressure created, the cell will eventually burst. So maintaining this pump in an effective way is very important. You will, in some cases, people who take poisons or toxins into their body, the toxins disorganize the working of this pump. So such toxins will disorganize the working of the pump, and when they disorganize the working of the pump, the cells will die, and eventually the individual will also die. So this is how the sodium potassium pump is important in primary active transport. So that is one example under primary active transport, the sodium potassium pump. So we've seen how it works: 3 sodium out, 2 potassium in. If we have 30 sodium out, 20 potassium out, and people who take poisons or toxins, this pump might be affected. Cells will end up taking in excess of sodium ions, which will raise the osmotic potential. Cells will take up excess water and burst. So when cells burst in the body, that is very dangerous. Let it be a human body, the body of an animal, body of fish. It might be dangerous for the cell. So which other example falls under primary active transport? They are the hydrogen potassium ATPase pumps. So hydrogen potassium ATPase pumps, where are they found? These pumps are found in the parietal cells. This pump will operate in the parietal cells. The parietal cells are found in the digestive system, around the gastric region, the stomach region. So these parietal cells are capable of producing hydrogen ions, which hydrogen ions we very well know will provide an acidic pH, a conducive pH for working of the enzyme pepsin, or for activating the pepsinogen from its inactive state to the active form, which is pepsin. So parietal cells, this is where the pump will work, and if this is our parietal cell, cell A is the parietal cell, let's say cell A is a parietal cell, the pump will move hydrogen ions, will pump hydrogen ions, hydrogen ions, hydrogen ions, and another hydrogen ion into the lumen of the stomach. So let's imagine now we are having a hollow area, which is the lumen of the stomach. Now the parietal cell, its role is to pump up the hydrogen ions. But of course the hydrogen ions are in a low concentration in the parietal cells as compared to the lumen where they are being pumped. And that is what we call active transport. We are moving a molecule from a region of its low concentration to a region where it is in a high concentration, but utilizing energy in form of ATP. Energy in form of ATP. So the pump will work effectively in presence of ATP to provide the hydrogen ions for the acidic pH in the lumen of your stomach. But however, this one can be, we can have an application of this in patients who have peptic ulcer disease and patients who have diseases like gastroesophageal reflux disease, which is also called GERD. Such patients will have high acid concentrations. They will have high acids in the stomach, which corrode, which burn their stomach walls. And drugs that inhibit the working of this pump, drugs called proton pump inhibitors or PPIs, proton pump inhibitors like omeprazole will work by inhibiting the working of these pumps. So someone takes omeprazole, which is a proton pump inhibitor, reduces on the quantity of protons produced from the parietal cell, less acid comes to the stomach lumen, and limited burning of the acids in the walls. So this is how we can use the pump to manage conditions like peptic ulcer disease and gastroesophageal reflux disease. So that is it with the hydrogen potassium pumps. The hydrogen potassium pumps. Let's have a glimpse of another pump that is under primary active transport, and that is the calcium ion ATPase. So this calcium ion ATPase is a pump also in our body, aided with presence of ATP, that is primary active transport. And this pump works in a way that if this is the pump, calcium, let's imagine we are having a muscle cell and we have calcium ions. High quantities of calcium ions are found in the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Sarcoplasmic reticulum. And we know calcium ions. So this is our sarcoplasmic reticulum. Then this is our muscle cell. Let's just assume it's a muscle cell. Then we have a sarcoplasmic reticulum. We very well know that calcium ions are required for muscle contraction. And if we want to relax a muscle, for muscle relaxation to happen, we need to drain the muscle. We deplete the muscle of calcium ions. So we deplete that muscle to remove the calcium ions. So this is what happens. Imagine a muscle has been contracted, so it has high quantities of calcium ions. Then it wants to release the calcium ions to relax. It will send back the calcium ions to the sarcoplasmic reticulum where they are stored. So that means these calcium ions are being transported from where they are low in concentration to where they are high in concentration, of course, with aid of energy in form of ATP. So this is another form of active transport, or primary active transport. That is another form of primary active transport. So to summarize these forms of the examples of primary active transport, we say we have the sodium potassium pump, which we say aims at pumping 3 sodium ions out for 2 potassium ions into the cell. Then we have the hydrogen potassium ATPase pump. Also this one, which is found in the parietal cells, producing hydrogen ions to provide the acidic pH in the stomach. Then finally we have the calcium ATPase calcium ATPase pump. So that is it for primary active transport. We are going to have a look at secondary active transport.